Hey guys, on to the next one. Oops. According to FBI documents, Petty worked in an Air Force intelligence and sometimes bragged about his intelligence connections in later years. When the Finder's story broke, WUSA reported that a police source claimed Petty's deceased wife worked for the CIA. Cults That Kill author Larry... Oh dear, that's really bad. Whatever his name is, who has many sources in the FBI and Washington Metropolitan Police, says he was told the Finders once did database training for the CIA. This is linked. I don't think you have to read anything deep and dark into this. Of course not, he says. The interesting part about the Finders is that they like to play games with law enforcement agencies. That's their shtick. Really? What, like false flags? As you'll notice in Tallahassee, they did indeed embarrass them. It may have been one of their games. None of the Tallahassee police I spoke with knew anything about the Finders working for an intelligence operation, but they all had a similar response to investigator Cheryl Weigard's... I can't even see that anymore, guys. Nothing they are involved with would surprise me. Paula Arico nearly spits up her food laughing when I tell her people suggest the Finders may be spooks. Arico and I are eating at a restaurant in Tallahassee. She resettled here after the juvenile court finally deemed her fit to raise Mary and John Paul. That's their model. So pretend they're CIA. To pretend they're CIA, says Arico, who was in the group for 8 years and now works as a bookkeeper for a progressive construction company. Wouldn't it be an exciting life? This is a cover, guys. The media, I think the media, the CIA, and all of them together stop this from being investigated any further. This is one of the few times in our many talks that Paula calls the group they. Though she left the Finders more than a year ago, it's still we this and we that. Oh, of course it is. She also still speaks lovingly, no, adoringly of Petty. The rest of us are just dead between the ears compared to him, says Arico. Arico has a theory for why the Finders gather megabytes of information. We want to be the best at everything, and you can't be the best in anything if you don't have the information about what the best is, she says. So getting your information gathering skills together is the first thing you have to do. But why compile a giant who's who? I ask. It's a mystery why things are of interest to Petty, but he's not able to call complete games if he doesn't have complete information. You don't know what game Petty has in mind to call tomorrow. He already has it in his mind. He's got next year's game in mind, based on the information you're bringing him right now. Talk like this sounds like slavish devotion. Brainwashing cult. But ultimately, the labels are stupid. If any group defies a label, it's the Finders. They're constantly changing, reinventing themselves, drafting new constitutions, setting new rules. RTGIAD. A taste of Finders cosmology can be found in John Fowles' novel The Magus, in which Morris, conscious, get it? Bedazzles the protagonist with a troupe of actors, consciousness seekers playing the God game. As one of the Magus characters says, in the God game we start from the premise that in reality all is fiction, yet no single fiction is necessary. Paula Arico has lived the God game, The best thing about it for me is that I lived and worked with my best friends for 8 years, Ariko says. It's hard to have that, and in a situation where everyone was committed to working it out, if you ever had that one-on-one relationship with another person where there's that long-term level of commitment, I had that with 20 people. You really trusted 20 people, I ask? For the time that I did, she replies, I got my eyes open pretty quickly in about 3 weeks of February 1987. But up until then, yeah, I had implicit trust because we were all committed to Petty's dream. His dream was our dream. On the day of the arrest, Paula Arako was working temp jobs in San Francisco, sharing an apartment with a single mother not in the group. It was part of a women's game that had been underway since December 1986, and Arako was having a blast. For a long time, the woman had wanted the men to do more child rearing, and it was finally happening. She was sure Mary and John Paul were in good hands. I can't describe the feeling for those kids, says Arako. They were the future of the tribe. We are all fucked up. No amount of game playing has managed to straighten us out. Some people have been in the group for 20 years and are still fucked up. It's the new generation that's going to bring the new age in, she notes. That she doesn't think people in the group are any more fucked up than non-finders. Arako didn't get wind something was wrong until Friday morning. I was getting ready to... Not this again. Go to work, and I got a phone call from somebody who was telling me that if Stuart, SS, had already called me and told me to go to Tallahassee, that those orders were reversed. The person didn't have any other information. Carolyn said mother of BB was the only woman's game player who had a computer, and she kept Paula and the others plugged into the group. Paula called her and learned zilch. Then the mother said Ariko, North, Judy Evans and Pat Livingston began hearing news reports. By Friday afternoon, we were all in a tizzy, says Ariko. They finally contacted Petty, Southern California, and planned a group meeting in San Francisco for Saturday night. I asked why they didn't call the Tallahassee police in the interim. We had to make a group decision, she says. Petty arrived at dusk and, as is their custom, the women massaged him to help him think. They carried out traditional finders meeting, each person speaking their mind, going round and round in a circle. Since the police had seized the computers from their DC homes, one of the group's concerns was how to stay in touch. But the kids were topic A. This wasn't the first time that things had not gone right with the kids' game, and we were all just really upset about that. That nobody had learnt their lessons any other time, she says. Petty's advice, your home is in DC, not Tallahassee. Go back to DC and let your presence be known. They took his advice. Back in DC, Sunday night, the women, the alleged Satan worship, kidnapping, brainwash pornographers, were greeted by reporters camped on their porches. Petty's game call was to let the FBI call the game. The possibility of kidnapping, the Bureau said, took precedence over the misdemeanor child abuse charges. One agent advised they immediately head to Florida and hire a good attorney. When the mothers called Scott Hunt at the Tallahassee Police Department on Monday evening, they couldn't get through. Carolyn's on the phone saying she's BB's mother, and she's met by snorts and giggles, recalls Ariko. She's the 200th caller claiming these beautiful children. They finally spoke to Tallahassee police, but Hunt still told the media they had yet to hear from their mothers. I'll never forgive him for that, says Ariko. After finishing the last FBI interview on Wednesday, the women hit the road for Tallahassee. By Friday, they were sitting in their lawyer's office. You haven't lived until you've been employed by the finders, says the attorney hired to represent them, Paula Walsborski. They elect a new leader each day. I could be hired or fired 2 or 3 times in 24 hours. But I really got sucked in. I loved it. There were great sexy constitutional issues. Constitutional issues didn't come into play for weeks, though. It took until the next Thursday, in fact, for Wolbowski to set up a court-sanctioned 1-hour meeting between the mother and kids. The mother and child reunion took place at a park where a dozen HRS officials showed up to watch. We would not leave, says Arako. We told them that they would have to physically take the children away from us. We were not going to get up and walk away from our children. John Paul is in my arms and he's saying, but I want to go home with you. And I'm saying, well, I want you to go home with me too. I just sat there with him crying my eyeballs out, and he's crying his eyeballs out, and they came and took him away from me. During the next few weeks, the finders settled into the media saddle and displayed what may be their finest wit and humour of the affair, but it ultimately drove Arako and 2 other mothers from the group. A memo attributed to MD Petty, delivered to the Tallahassee Democrat, said he was resigning as leader of the finders, a position he said he didn't know he held. I thought I was just a consultant on wit and humour, the memo said. If I ever was the leader, I hereby resign to devote myself full-time to Zen walking. The finders also started publishing a newsletter, the Daily Finder, in which they announced that they were all moving to Tallahassee. The finders are always looking for signs and symbols, they wrote. Since February the 4th, Florida has been sending signals that they want to keep some finders members, so now the rest are coming. Another issue of the Daily Finder, Come to Tallahassee, invited friends to come join the drama and featured the song Old Tallahassee. Well, I came to Tallahassee in a van so full of glee, they put me in the jailhouse with a chain upon my knee. You get the idea. Before the trial, Ammerman and Holwell spoke freely with Wolbowski, who was assisted by several finders' men. They all had handlebar moustaches and dressed alike, Wolbowski said. I sent them to FSU Library to get me books for the case to explain their philosophy. They came back with books on psychology, India, American Indians, Samoan tribes, Chinese philosophy. Juvenile court was packed with onlookers and media on the first day of the custody battle. Witnesses Holwell and Ammerman showed up in prison garb and shackles. Talk about a circus, says Wolbowski. We could have sold tickets. Right before the hearing, Wolbowski learnt that the finders' men she had been working with had left town and were replaced by Steve Usden. She also got the news that Petty had put a gag order on Ammerman and Holwell and that she was going to be fired. I said, okay, the First Amendment issues haven't even been argued and they stand up and fire me, she said. In court, Steve Usden delivered a proclamation from Petty. Our interests and the state's interests are the same, he said, so we don't need counsel. Some people practice law 20 or 30 years and never get fired on television. Wolbowski jokes. Petty's strategy of non-resistance split the mothers. North and Livingston gave Wolbowski the boot as instructed, while Arako, Evans and said retained her. Arako describes the behind-the-scenes drama of that morning. Livingston had called Petty. She begged him to tell her what to do, says Arako. He said, fire your attorney. If you called him and begged him and he told you to do it, you can't say no. She was in agony. She really loves her son and she knew what would happen the way I knew what would happen if I fired my attorney. It wouldn't be in the best interest of the children. Arako understood Petty's logic. If you're in a confrontational situation, in some ways you're creating it. Do what Gandhi and Ammerman and Holwell and others have done when attacked. Don't fight. On another level, there were the teachings of Lao Tzu, planning, strategy, tactics, loyalty. Those ideas are really the crux of the group, says Arako, and they are what keep the group functioning at the high level that it does. Petty wanted them to go before the judge and tell him in unison that he could end all this right now. He could be the game caller. I think if you were a judge and there were 5 women in your courtroom and in all of your experiences with them, you knew that they really loved their kids and were trying to do the right things, says Ariko. That's the position Petty wanted the judge put in. Ariko couldn't accept Petty's advice. The group told me to choose between Petty and my kids. I chose my kids. The hearing lasted until Wednesday. Warborski hammered on the constitutional issues and appealed to the judge's experience. This is a judge who has seen thousands of juvenile cases, Warborski says. I told him if the walks could talk, they would cry. This wasn't the real thing. Essentially, that's what he said in the end. He praised the efforts to raise the kids correctly. He was only concerned about their educations. John, Paul, BB, and Honeybee, the 3 youngest children, were returned to their mothers, Ariko said, and Evans. The judge didn't free the older 3 because he wanted their mothers to demonstrate that they would adequately educate them. Ariko agreed to cross every T and dot every I, and after 2 months of state supervision, she was given full custody of Mary. Livingston and North's children were put in foster homes, but the state finally relinquished custody to the mothers that August. Hours after the March the 18th juvenile case ended, the finders announced to the press that they had disbanded. It wasn't true, of course, but it did signal the end of Ariko said and Evans' membership in the group. Ariko cites many personal reasons for leaving the group that have little to do with the Florida incident. A few years before, she says, I saw the writing on the wall, but I didn't read it. She spoke with attorneys about suing the authorities and decided there were too many obstacles. I would have had to put my children into therapy immediately to prove that they had been traumatized. As far as I'm concerned, whatever the trauma there was, they've basically gotten over it now. Another hurdle would be proving wrongful intent. Everything they did was within the limits of the law, she says. Ariko's final analysis of what went wrong. You just can't have a highly disciplined lifestyle and have kids. You just can't. It just doesn't work. Make no mistake, though, she loved being a finder. It's a very magnetic situation, she says. But the mystery's gone now, the whole mystique, that nobody knew what we really did. And is that the end of it? Okay, yep, that's the end of the important message for Chief from Finder's case. Okay, next page. Chief Mel Tucker, Tallahassee Police Department, sent by fax. Dear Chief Tucker, as an associate producer of CBS 48 Hours, I would like to request that, under Florida Chapter 119, you make available all files and materials associated with your investigation into the Finders Organization that took place in 1987. I will be in your city sometime in the middle of next week and would like to examine the records in person. If there is a copying fee, CBS would reimburse you your costs. Thank you for your help in this matter. From CBS News. Tallahassee Police Department, the House of Representative, Congress of the United States. Dear Chief Tucker, in furtherance of its legislative and oversight responsibilities, under the rule of the House, the Committee on House Administration is conducting an investigation into an organization known as the Finders. In order to examine the credibility of certain allegations against the Finders organization, the committee must obtain all relevant documentation. It has come to my attention that your office may have certain information which will further this investigation. Accordingly, I am requesting under Chapter 119 of the Florida Public Records Law that you provide the committee with all reports in your possession concerning the organization known as the Finders. Please address your response to blank of my staff. Should you have any further questions, blank can be reached at blank. Child abuse. it's not going to get any clearer if I make it bigger, guys. Sorry. So I can't really read that bit. I can't read that either. And then there's just a lot of... Oh, okay, these are the charges and things. This writer was dispatched to Myers Park in reference to the report of a well-dressed man with several small children who were unkept. Upon my arrival, I observed 2 men dressed in coat and ties on the playground at Myers Park, accompanied by several small children. I also observed a blank parked on the playground at Myers Park. This writer noticed that the children... I can't read that bit. 4 WMs and what I think is saying is so many males and females were very dirty and unkept. The children had bug bites on their entire bodies and scratches on their legs. The writer spoke to suspect number 1, who stated that he and suspect number 2 were teachers from Washington, D.C., and they were en route to Mexico with the children. Suspect number 1 stated they were going to Mexico to set up a school for brilliant children. When asked about the parents of the children, suspect 1 became very evasive and stated that the children's parents were in Washington, D.C. Suspect number 2 refused to give this writer any information, and he pretended to faint when told he was under arrest for child abuse. Suspect number 2 fell face down on the ground and refused to stand up. Oh, jeez. He was carried by this writer and 2 other law enforcement officers and placed into a patrol vehicle. The suspects were transported to the police department by this writer and OFC blank to be interviewed by something blank. The children were also transported to the police department by Officer blank. The children gave their names as follows: victims, big blank. The children were extremely hungry when they got to the police department, and old children stated they hadn't eaten since this morning. The children appeared as if they hadn't bathed in several days, and most of them didn't have any underwear. The older children stated that they have to do good things to get food as a reward, and they are given oranges, bananas, carrots, and raw potatoes to eat. Blank, one of the older kids, stated that blank and that blank, suspect number 2 refused to talk to investigators blank and to intake counsellors blank and blank with... I can't read the writing. The suspects were advised of the Miranda warning by investigator blank, after which suspect number 1 continued to be very evasive and suspect number 2 continued to be uncooperative. The children were released to HBS and the suspects were transported to the Leon Co jail for processing. The suspect's vehicle was confiscated and impounded by... I can't read that. Contrast Wrecker, Delash City. Sergeant Blank also responded to the scene. Note, the children's clothing were extremely filthy and they all had mismatched socks. This officer was dispatched to assist Officer Blank in reference to a WM well-dressed with some children unkept at Myers Park. Upon my arrival, Officer Blank was talking to the two WMs dressed in coats and ties. The two men had 6 children with them in a blank. The children were dirty and unkept. The van smelt bad. I spoke with the children while Officer Blank continued to talk to the two men. The oldest child's name, Blank. She said she did not know if her last name was Blank or Blank. She said that Blank. She also stated that one of the other kids, Blank, and more Blank. She identified the other children as Blank or Blank, more blanks. She said that they all lived together at Blank, Washington, D.C., phone number Blank. I asked where their mothers were and they said they were in Washington, D.C. I asked them where they were going. They said they didn't know. They were just going different places. I asked where they were staying. They said at campgrounds. They have been sleeping in the van and in a tent. I asked when was the last time they saw their mothers. They said before Christmas. They said they have no Christmas. They also stated they do not see their mothers much, that they are being weaned from their mothers. They said they didn't go to school. They said that the two men teach them. I asked them what they teach them. They said games and how to read. They said they did things for rewards. I asked what types of things they got rewards for, and they said working. They said they got food as rewards. They said the adults had to do what the game caller said, and the adults told the children what to do. They said they were not allowed inside the house. They said they were hungry and had not eaten since this morning. I asked what they ate. They said raw vegetables and fruits. They were transported to the police department and turned over to something. What's that? 2 hours. The two men were arrested for child abuse. See Officer Blank and Investigators Blank's report. In reference to the above case, the 6 children were wearing the following clothing. Something had on a black and red horizontal striped shirt with a hood, blue corduroy pants and blue tennis shoes. Extremely dirty. Number 2 had on red corduroy pants, blue and red long sleeve shirt and tennis shoes. Extremely dirty. Number 3 had on red shorts, blue shirt and tennis shoes with mismatched socks. Extremely dirty and no diaper. Number 4 had on green shorts. Can't read that. Pink t-shirt with a red sleeveless jacket. White tennis shoes and socks. Extremely dirty. Next one had on a blue long sleeve white striped shirt, blue sweatpants and tennis shoes. Extremely dirty. Number 6 had on lavender and pink blouse with lavender and white shorts, mismatched socks and tennis shoes. They were extremely filthy. It is to be noted that suspect number 2, who had several AKAs, Blank, but no valid identification, was arrested as Blank. It was later revealed that the reporting person, who did not wish to be contacted, was Blank. With the something dress and telephone number, address. Oh, this is going to be hard to read. On February the 4th, 1987, this investigator was advised by patrol of the above incident. The children were brought to TFD by Officer Blank in the van described in the initial report. This investigator observed the following in regards to the children. They were dirty, both clothes and body, dishevelled, hungry, and had obvious bug bites in different areas of their bodies. The children were identified as blank. Identification was made by blank, the oldest girl of the group. The investigator spoke to blank first. She was asked who her parents were. She stated that blank. When asked what her last name was, she said which one. She stated that blank also stated blank. The following address was given as her home address, blank in Washington, D.C., also gave this investigator a home phone number of blank. The investigator questioned blank on the purpose of their trip. She began to tell this investigator that the younger children needed to be weaned from their mothers. She stated that they left D.C. around Christmas time and had been living in the van and camping. According to blank, blank told the adults to put the children in the van and leave to wean the younger children. She was unclear as to when she had last had a shower or bath. They had eaten an orange in the van sometime before the police stopped them. When questioned about school, blank replied they did not go to school. She stated that they were taught at home. The investigator then asked blank about the house on blank street. She stated that the kids were not allowed to go inside the house. When asked why, she stated that the game caller said they could not. Blank stated that the game caller is a man named blank. She stated that they wrote to blank using the computer in the van, a TRS-80. He would tell them what to do. This investigator told blank that I did not understand. She stated that they were different. She stated that they had a man of the roof, the game caller, who tells us what to do. Blank stated that they read bulletin boards and take notes on notepads. Blank said they would go to people's houses and babysit. She said that this was fun because they got to eat what was there and do what people wanted them to. She would not elaborate. This investigator asked blank who the other man in the van was. She stated that was blank. She said that he also calls himself blank. At another point in the interview, blank also called him blank. When this investigator attempted to talk to blank about sexual abuse, she became very evasive. She denied any bad touches or any inappropriate behaviour by the adults. Blank became very fidgety and wanted to end the interview. That's very sus. That's a sign. This investigator asked if the police had ever been to the house in D.C. She relayed a confusing story of blank having a fight. She said that blank had kicked blank and the police came. Blank said that she was in a big house for children. Then they came and got her out. She was not any clearer about the incident. Later in the evening, this investigator spoke with blank and blank together. He was unclear on many things. He said blank when asked questions pertaining to time, he appeared to have poor understanding or concept of time. He was also very curious of various office implements, such as a stapler, a typewriter. The investigator then asked about some of the games they play. Blank described one game as taking off the man's clothes and putting them on, then going through the pockets for money. When this investigator asked about the man and if all of their clothes were off, both blank and blank said no. They then stated that they only removed the man's jackets. Another game was described as taking a shirt that had holes in it and running away with it, then tearing it up. Both blank and blank advised that the woman had come downstairs at Christmas time with no clothes on. Both children felt that this was very funny and went along with the concept of it being a game. Blank also reiterated what Blank had conveyed to this investigator about not being allowed to live in the house. He stated that the men were told to put the kids outside, and that they would like to make the men stay outside. The other children were too small, inarticulate to interview. This investigator did observe certain behaviour that was consistent with indications that these children were not used to being in a house or using indoor plumbing. Both Blank and Blank wet urinated in their pants. Blank wanted to go outside to go to the bathroom. When the van was checked for clothing for the children, several boxes of fruit and vegetables were found. The children were extremely hungry and were given bananas and carrots to eat. Blank ate approximately 8 bananas and a carrot. The other children were similarly hungry. AC Blank of HRS responded to TDF to take the children into protective custody. The children were fingerprinted, with the exception of Blank and Blank. They were placed in protective custody before prints were taken and photographed. During this process, Blank saw the van registration on the investigator's pad. She stated that the address which the van was registered to was the warehouse. She stated that they would go there sometimes. This investigator contacted the National Center for Exploited Children in Washington, D.C., and gave them the information concerning the children. They stated that they would give the information to one of their investigators in the morning. They also checked for any children currently missing that matched the descriptions given. This investigator also contacted Sergeant Blank of Metro PD in Washington, D.C. He was given the telephone number and address of the Blank house. He stated that he would call the number and see who was there. Sergeant Blank called this investigator back and stated that the phone number had an answering machine hookup, which had a very weird message on it. He did not say what the message was. He stated that he was going to send a cruiser to the house. He then transferred this investigator to Desk Sergeant Blank. She took information from this investigator in regards to the child abuse charges. She also stated that the message on the answering machine was strange. She stated the message had some kind of biblical passage on it. Sergeant Blank also stated that she would send another cruiser by the house. Metro DC did not recontact this investigator that night. This investigator attempted to interview both suspects. They were read their rights per Miranda and asked to sign an acknowledgement. Both refused. Suspect Blank asked what the charges were. He was advised of the charges of child abuse. Suspect Blank laid on the floor of the holding cell and jerked his body. He refused to open his eyes or acknowledge this investigator. The van was inventoried by patrol and towed to Deluxe. The children were scheduled to have a doctor's appointment on the following day, 5th of the 2nd, 87. HRS advised they would handle the hearing at 8:15 a.m. on the 5th of the 2nd, 87. Additional information. On February the 5th, 1987, this investigator spoke to Detective Blank of Metro Intelligence Unit in Washington, D.C. He asked this investigator if I thought there was a possibility there may be more children at either of the locations Blank. This investigator stated that may be true, but I did not have any specific child that I knew of there. He stated that he was going to get a search warrants on both the locations and try to serve them later this date. This investigator was also advised that both suspects were given a $100,000 cash bond at first appearance. This investigator spoke to Captain Blank at LCJ and arranged for the suspects to be placed in isolation. Due to overcrowding at the jail, the suspects had to be placed together. This investigator was also advised by Blank of HRS that 2 children were confirmed cases of sexual abuse. She stated that the exams on Blank and Blank were consistent with sexual abuse and that Blank had old bruises which were indicative of bite marks. Blank was not sure if the marks were adult or child bite marks. Following another group of interviews in an unrelated case, this investigator went through some items removed from the van by the investigator blank. A piece of paper titled The Ballad of Ballads was found. See copy in case files. The ballad made reference to the warehouse, a house in the mountains, Miami, Hawaii, San Diego, and China. Computer disks were also found in the van. Investigator Blank advised that when he ran them, they proved to be program disks, not databases. Late that night, Detective Blank conducted this investigation. He advised that he had been on the search warrant at the warehouse. Indicated they had found a large amount of computer goods, a hot tub, sauna, large TV room, a library of books, some concerning mind control, and satellite disk on the roof, and various stage-like settings of rooms that were roped off. Detective Blank advised that there were computers in the house and various materials. He stated that he had not had the time to go through all the information yet. On the 6th of February 1987, this investigator met with Blank of the FBI. He stated that the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI would be involved in this case. This investigator Blank and Agent Blank went to LCJ to interview suspect Blank. Upon arrival, we were informed that suspect Blank was there. We spoke to him first. He described suspect as being a loner. He stated that he has not seen Blank in 3 to 4 years. Blank stated that Blank had shown up at Blank in Gainesville approximately 2 weeks ago with Blank. He stated the suspect Blank remained blank for approximately 1 hour. He told them that he was en route to Miami. Blank gave this investigator a letter he had received as a reply to the letter he wrote Blank. The letter contained 2 pieces of paper. One was a handwritten letter signed by Blank, stating that the suspect was en route to China via Hawaii. This letter was written on a piece of paper with the letterhead of Gun Ho Traders. Blank, the other slip of paper contained in the letter was to Blank. It was a letter with pornographically described suspect Blank's genitals and thanked Blank for having such a stud for a son. It appeared to be computer generated. The letter was signed by the wives of Gung Ho. The letter was post-dated May 19th, 1986. Suspect Blank refused to talk to Blank of these investigators. Suspect Blank did speak to these investigators, but only to give basic information and to ask questions about the children. He did ask if the children had been seen by a doctor and if anything was found. He also asked where the children were. He was advised that the children were in protective custody and were not in need of any immediate medical attention. Several leads from other areas outside Tallahassee were given to FBI to follow up on. Agent Blank also spoke with suspect Blank on the telephone. He is located in the New York area. Agents in the Gainesville area were also sent to interview people who had seen the suspects and children in their area recently. This investigator and Agent Blank also went to the treehouse where Blank and Blank were being held in protective custody. Agent Blank took 35mm pictures, black and white in colour, of the 3 children for use by his agency. The children appeared to be in good spirits. Okay, guys, I'll pick this up again. I'm just going to have to do it in parts. I need to have breaks in between. Otherwise, I'll start coughing. Okay, guys, I'll be back with the next part very soon. Okay, bye.